right, everybody, welcome to Mr. Haig's class, and I've got a very special guest here today. So in the previous podcast, I had talked about what was going on down in Temecula and all the craziness over there. And I don't want to mark people as villains or heroes, but I'm not afraid to say Miss Rachel Dennis over here is a hero for Temecula and all the craziness that you had to endure. And we spoke before this session here and talked about how it impacted your family, your own belief system. So let me recap a little bit about what happened at Temecula. You had 3 very highly conservative, newly elected board members. They came in, they had obviously an agenda. They fired the superintendent because the superintendent wouldn't follow their agenda. They changed the curriculum because they mentioned a very well-known homosexual rights activist in Harvey Milk. And then I guess they did other crazy things that caused a lot of concern, and it drew national attention. Now, by the way, if you want to go see Miss Rachel Dennis's, she's on Instagram, right? And we'll post that on in Instagram and TikTok. So she was the main news source for me to what was happening down at Temecula. And I've been trying to get her on here, and I'm thanking God for you being here. So why don't you tell us more about what the situation was and is currently right now?
Yeah, so we have a pastor down here who I consider extremist, right. He did have, and the reason I say extremist is just from watching him, and he did have his own church members at the January 6th insurrection, and they were tried and convicted. So Tim Thompson of 412 Church started a political action committee in town, and he started raising money and was pushing out false information that our schools were loaded with CRT, with sexual indoctrination, with forced vaccines, all kinds of things. And he chose, or the candidates found him, I don't know, somehow they linked up, and Tim Thompson raised $100,000 that November, that political term. And these candidates went door to door with this misinformation, scaring people in our community that there is porn in our schools as young as kindergarten, and which is not true. It's not true. And so with this extreme right conservative ideology comes a lot of fear, I believe. And so the fear that rose up in this community over what was being said and grooming and all these different things is, in my opinion, what got these people elected.
So how did he figure pornography is being introduced into the schools? Because I've been a teacher for 10 years, and I've never seen anything like that. What is considered porn to this church?
So they are considering personal stories that may have some sort of, not even explicit, but possibly some explicit language in it. So we'll take, for instance, what happened to our drama teacher at Temecula Valley High School with the Angels in America play. And so that is one that they are saying contains porn. Now, the play, I didn't even know what the play was.
Yeah,
and such a big was caused about it that I thought, oh, well, now everybody knows what this is, and all the kids are looking it up. But they tried to get that teacher fired because Angels in America was listed as an approved play, and a group of students in his class chose that play, and he told them about the sex scene in it, and told them to skip that part when they perform the play. This got home, to a parent, and it was called porn. And so where I caution people is to be careful what we call porn, because we can't call rape porn.
No.
That's going to cause a whole lot of other problems, is with consent, with what is actually happening if we're mislabeling personal individual stories as porn.
And this is what this church was doing. And
this is what the church.
Okay, so they did this, and I know they're anti-gay, obviously. And of course, I'm not even going into CRT. I did a whole podcast about that. Nobody in this planet knows and understands CRT, so I'm not going to waste my time explaining to them. But that, again, so the thing that concerns me is the impact that this one church, and I don't know if there's other churches like this, because I know Temecula is pretty conservative, but there's nothing wrong with conservatism. It's actually quite a nice thing if you really think about it. But anyways, I'm not here to promote it or go against it, but I'm just saying that the fact that a church, and especially this pastor, can walk into schools without an appointment, just walk in there and demand to speak with a principal based on views that he himself thinks is wrong, and not comply with the students or the teachers or even the parents. I think that's crazy.
Yeah, and he would go on unannounced, demanding to speak with administration or the principal at the time. If the principal wasn't available, he would then tell the community and his church members that the principal refused.
Wow, so he lied.
And he's really full of lies and misinformation. He seeks out the things online that will push his agenda, and that's where he says he gets his information. So in the topic of queerness, I mean, all you have to do is sit down with some queer people, or some queer kids, and ask them. And you will find out very quickly that many, many, many queer people, especially ones raised in the church, have prayed and prayed and prayed for this to leave them, and it's just simply not their choice. And so you have a man who's literally calling women in town witches who are standing against him. And he is literally saying that queerness is demonic. So to me, this is dangerous.
It is very dangerous. So so his political action committee, I guess, what's it called? I forget the name of the, do you know?
IE Family PAC.
Okay, IE Family PAC. So IE Family PAC funded and endorsed these, I guess, 3 board members, correct? And we can name them, Komrosky, I believe, if you can just name them, please.
Yes, Joseph Komrosky, Jen Wiersma, and Danny Gonzalez.
Okay, so those 3 took over the board, and obviously with the blessings of this church. And the first act was to try to clean up the curriculums, that they seem very sinful, I guess. Yeah,
they're at their first meeting, they banned CRT. First meeting.
Okay, well that's nothing. That means nothing.
That means nothing, but what it did was they were calling Black History CRT.
Okay.
So that was their first thing they did, and then, as we all suspected, they moved on to the queer kids.
Okay, so then where did the okay, so now we're talking about they fired the superintendent because the superintendent obviously didn't support them.
No, the superintendent wanted to follow the laws of California.
Right, and okay, so and we'll showcase the name of the superintendent who unfortunately was removed. And of course, after that, then we're talking about the curriculum change is what I'm concerned about, because now he's stepping on all sorts of toes, especially that of the teachers. Can you go into what they did there?
Yeah, so teachers were being called activists and leftists and groomers, even if they provided a safe space in their classroom at lunchtime for any kid. But if there happened to be a rainbow in the window, then that is a groomer. The teachers were not heard, were not listened to. The teachers' union was not listened to. This pack and these people had it on their mind what they were going to do. And they have said very clearly, we did exactly what we said we were going to do. We don't want sexual indoctrination, they call it. Instead of just learning that queer people exist. And maybe, you know what, we can teach a little bit about some of these queer people and histories so that queer children can see, that somebody like me can go somewhere or can be somebody. Right. We don't have to hide.
No, and I over the years, and I've been a teacher for 10 years now, I've had many gay, lesbian, queer, even transgender students, and after a while, they're to me, they just become like anybody else. Some are exceptional students, some are you just want to kick them out of the classroom, just like anybody else. But what really got to me is when they changed the curriculum, because it was called social studies. I forget what it's called. I should know these things. But anyways, it was a social studies curriculum that they rejected and forced out of the school, which, by the way, I'm not sure is even legal in the California state. No, it's not legal.
Yeah.
And only because it mentions the name of Harvey Milk. And it wasn't even in the student editions. It was in the teachers' editions. So the teachers had the right to mention him or not. I would imagine that it would have saved them a lot of time and a lot of reputational damage that they caused themselves if they just said, we don't want you to mention this man's name. And the teachers would be like, I better not. I mean, they wouldn't like it. I personally wouldn't like it, but I'd be like, okay, let's just keep the peace and let's not mention the name. But that really started this whole attention. That grabbed everybody's attention nationwide.
It did, because I think Temecula's last books or something are decades old. And so by California Ed Code, we're under a timeline on inclusive history, inclusive social studies through the eyes of other people. And so him not approving, or that board not approving those textbooks, which, by the way, is one of the most highly used textbooks across the nation, then put our students at risk of not having updated material, and put our teachers at risk of not being able to teach what they're supposed to teach according to California Ed Code.
And it only hurts the students.
It only hurts the students. Education is knowledge. It's powerful. The things that we don't know, we can be afraid of. And so if we don't know about a certain type of person who's not like us, and we don't take the time to get to know them, then there can be some anxiety and fear around what's unfamiliar, uncomfortable. And the thing with Harvey Milk that really got me was the problem they said they had was that he had a relationship with an underaged young man, boy.
Yes, that is true.
And so if you apply the same thought process across the board, I was wondering, well, when are you going to take Thomas Jefferson out of the books then?
I fully agree.
It's okay to rape your slave?
Yeah. I mean,
You
I
know,
have to
so,
admit, I looked at the story of Harvey Milk, and I am not thrilled about it. In fact, I'd look down upon that. But it was, the relationship was with a 15 or 16-year-old man and he kid, I guess. He was in his 30s. But this started in New York, and in New York, legally speaking, it was okay because it was still considered consensual at that age. Then 2 years later, they both moved to California. The kid turned 18. He was still an adult, and so it became okay. But I can understand that. But to destroy an entire curriculum, I think that
yeah.
just went too far. I think that just kind of a little bit. So can I ask now? Again, I can delete this part out if you like. How did this whole thing impact your family? What got you motivated to take action?
Well, I have a queer child, and I was a pastor in town. And I saw what was happening at the Christian school to my child because of her being queer. She was outed to me, and I didn't handle it well. I was not ready to receive that information. And through the course of bullying at school and parents calling in and saying their kids can't eat lunch with her anymore, and then no approval from mom at home, it led her to a very, very dark space, and she attempted to take her own life.
That's so bad.
And so, being a Christian, I know that bad fruit isn't going to come from good theology. And at that point, I literally had to step back and think, what will bring my child life? And I got on the radar, of some of the people in town. And I'm a very, very strong advocate, especially for my own child. And if I see something harming somebody, I've never been one to be quiet, no matter what the law says. So when you see the harm to LGBTQ people, to my own family, you're talking lifelong Republican Christian family as pastor 17 years.
Wow.
And you see how hateful and destructive this thinking of not educating yourself, not getting to know that there are people different than you, can affect the community and your own home, my own home. I had to determine who is safe to be around my child and who isn't. Who's going to say things that will uplift her, and who's going to say things that bring shame upon her. And so for my own home, for me personally, I'll say it's created a lot of chaos. In the process of all this, I left the church because of the harm. And so you're talking, losing your community, losing your Republican Party, losing your church.
Yeah.
It's just this great, great loss to the family, and it feels some ways like a betrayal. A betrayal in some ways. I told one person, lifelong Republican, that you turned on us as soon as I had a queer kid.
Yeah.
And why do and you had said earlier, you come to realize these kids are just like anybody else, and for some reason, we are reducing whole people to their sexuality or their gender.
Mm-hmm.
And I often tell people there is more to me than just the fact that I am a straight, cisgendered woman. A lot more to me. And there's a lot more to my daughter than the fact that she's a queer girl as well. And until we get to that point, right? I'm going to throw some scripture in there, until we get to the point where we aren't looking at people as male or female or American or Russian. People are people.
That's right.
and families are being destroyed. And people like me, honestly, and many others in this community, we're just trying to keep our children alive.
And it kills diversity too. I would imagine the environment that could have been created inside all the different schools over at Temecula. And also, it kind of isolate that. I mean, people don't understand how dangerous that could be when you have that kind of attitude and that ideology. I mean, it's one thing to have that ideology, but it's another thing to really act upon it and driving a young student to suicide.
Yes,
There's something wrong there.
Yeah, and when you're so scared, you know, I mean, in that book, it was, yes, the supplemental material that went into more depth about Harvey Milk, but in the book, it was one sentence.
Yeah.
You know, Harvey, the first openly gay politician. It's California history.
It is. It is, and he impacted an entire world. So let me ask you this: this whole thing happened. Now, what's the current state? Which one of those three people are still on the board? What happened to them, and where are we right now at Temecula?
Okay, so right now we are down to just one of them left on the school board. One moved away, Danny Gonzalez, but he moved to Texas. So then we were down to 2 and 2. 2 moderates. The other 2 are not extremists. In fact, I think they may even be conservative people. They just will listen to the students and follow California Ed Code to not cause suits. I mean, Temecula is in the middle of a lawsuit right now over this. And then the one that was recalled was the school board president, Joseph Komrosky. And there is one left, Jen Wiersma, sitting in the seat. And she will be in there for another 2 years before that election. Joseph Komrosky is allowed to run again this November. And so he will. And I tell people he already did 2 years. If he wins again, there's another 4.
Does the next 4 year on the federal level, because we now have a presidential election, does that concern you at all? You know what?
100%.
It does, really? Okay, yeah, I'm concerned too, but I'm not really afraid. We'll just keep on living. But what's your daughter up to these days?
You know what? She just graduated. She graduated early. I ended up pulling her and putting her in home for a bit. So she graduated early, and she's right now with friends. She's just hanging out with friends in the summer, you know. So she's living her best life again with a lot of allies around her. And we just let her know, you know, daily how much she is loved.
That's wonderful.
Just the way she...
And you know, I'll tell you this right now, we need more people like you. I think we'll be quite busy the next 4 years, and we have to keep at it. But it takes someone like yourself. Now again, I'm more of a moderate, so I listen to both sides, and I do kind of lean conservative because there's certain things that I love about conservative, but then there's certain things about liberalism that I like too, and human rights, the right to live your life to the fullest, the right to learn how you want, and banning books, all that garbage. It's just, you know, we want to allow people to learn and to live and to thrive as best we can. That's good for the country. That's how you make America great again, I would imagine.
Absolutely, I think so.
Yeah, so anyways, Rachel, we're almost out of time, and I am so honored, and I think this is one of my best interviews ever, and you really are. So I'm going to post your Instagram, so follow Rachel. You can also follow me, Mr. Haig's Class, and together we can make education. This is all for the students. That's all I do this podcast for. And I know that Rachel, Ms. Dennis here, has a daughter, but I felt her work really kind of saved lives for all the students over at Temecula. Such a beautiful place. Go visit it and enjoy yourselves. And Ms. Dennis, thank you so much. That's all we have. All right, over and out.
All right.
All right, we're done. That was,
okay.
You did fantastic.